Alright, hello everyone and welcome to the final video in the O-Level 2022 May-June Variant 2 PRM series. In this video, we'll be discussing the implementation for tasks 2 and 3 in pseudocode, much like we discussed the implementation for task 1 in the previous video, and the introduction and analysis of the question in episode 1. If you guys have not watched that video, I would highly recommend that you go back and watch that first, as a lot of what we do today is going to be built up on what we did previously. So without further ado, let's get into it. This video might be just a little bit longer simply because tasks 2 and 3 are slightly more complicated, but nothing too extraordinary, so it should be rather simple if you follow along. And if at any point there is anything that you do not understand, feel free to leave a comment and I shall reply to that. Alright, so here we are. What we are going to start with is a bunch of initialization. So if you so here we have the entire task being run and being controlled by a loop. Now, if you remember from when we discussed the structure of this code way back in the first video, we said that a lot of task 2, so this whole thing was task 1, we said that a lot of task 2 is going to be in a loop. If you remember this part that we drew here, this indicated that a lot of our code is going to be a part of a loop. So that's what's happening here. We are initializing or setting really this loop. And what that's doing is that it is saying that, all right, while continue flag is true, and continue flag here we have initialized to true, and also all of these variables, every variable you see here has been declared in task 1 or in the paper. If you wish to do it, if you wish to solve just task 2, you can declare them separately, but generally the assumption is that they have been declared unless they specifically mention that in the question. So here we say that we have initialized the booking number to 0, and the reason we did that is, if you remember from again from task the first number, we have to display the unique booking number. So there is a unique booking number that is allocated to every booking, and so here we are initializing that to 0. So the first time that somebody does a booking, it's going to refer to this number here. However, it is not going to be 0, and we're going to see why not in just a minute. So here what we do is we initialize booking number to 0, and we initialize continue flag to true. Now continue flag is a boolean, which means it has one of two values. It has either true or false, and here we have initialized it to true. Alright, so what's happening next is that we have this while loop being run on continue flag. So it's saying that while continue flag equals true, it's going to run all of this, right? And since we set the initial value to true, the first time it checks this, it is going to be true. So it is going to enter into this code and is going to do whatever the code asks of it, right? So so here what we're doing is we are again initializing a bunch of variables. Now take special note that I have initialized these inside of the loop. So this initialization block, this wasn't being done outside of the loop, and there's a reason for this. The reason that we are initializing this is that, let's say we have made one booking and now we wish to make another one. So what happens to all the data that is already present? Well, if let's say that sometime in this code we are allocating the number of people, we are allocating the number of adults, etc., that will if the initialization is before the loop begins, in the next iteration of the loop, that data will no longer be initialized. That data will store the values of the previous group of people, right? So let's say you have group A, and group A had 2 adults and let's say 3 children, and then they make their booking. So like this group is taken care of, this group is taken care of, right? We don't have this group. Now there's another group that has 1 adult and let's say no children, right? So it's just 1 person visiting. Now num adults is, sure, it's overwritten, so it goes from 2 to 1 because we have overwritten the adults value. However, the number of children remains at 3, because if all of this was outside, then every iteration the data wouldn't be initialized. So the data for children, which had been set to 3 by the previous group, that would remain at 3, and that is something we do not want, because we want to initialize the value of the number of children. So what we do is, instead of having to deal with all of that, we just initialize everything within this code block, within the loop. So this entire initialization occurs within the loop. So the values we're initializing will make a lot more sense as we go along, but just for the sake of reference, here we can see that we have a ticket type that we are initializing to 0, and what that means we will see in a second. Then we have all the types of tickets. We have the number of people, which is just the grand sum of people that are present in a group. Then we have the number of adults, we have the number of children, the number of children tickets. The reason that these are separate is for a reason that we shall see in just a second, but we have these two variables stored separately. Then we have number of seniors, the number of families, so number of family tickets, and then the number of group tickets bought. Now each of these are initialized separately, so there's no array for this, or there's no one variable that is being assigned to all of those. Each of these are being initialized separately. Then we do the exact same thing for the extra attractions. So we have the penguin attraction, we have the lion attraction, and we have the barbecue attraction, right? Then again, these initializations will make a lot more sense as we go along, but just to go through everything, let's take a look at them here. We have day choice equals 0. So if you remember from our discussion on the tasks from part 1, this probably will indicate the day we are currently at, right? It will indicate what day has been chosen, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. You get the idea, right? So we have day choice. Then we have extra choice. So extra choice will probably, like you would assume that extra choice will probably show which of these you have chosen. So which of this block of data you have chosen, which extra attraction you have gone for, right? The group has gone for. So that's extra choice. Day choice is it's a repeated it's a repeated line of code here. This shouldn't be here, but yeah, so here is not. All right, then we have total price. Total price is just everything everything that is here and everything that is here, just multiplied by the number that it's like applicable for. So let's say that we have 3 adults and one price is 20, just for reference sake. It might not be, but just for reference sake. So if num adults is equals to 3, so what we do is we say num adults times the price. So in this case it is 20.0. Remember, since that is a real value and not an integer value, so we multiply it by the cost, and this is the total price of the adult tickets, and so we add that to the total price, and we do this for every single ticket value. All right. Then we have individual equals 2. Why we have set this to 2 is also something we shall discuss in just a second. And then we have proceed equals to a string of 1. Again, why we have that as a string, we shall see as we go along in the code. All right. Then what we do is we increment the booking number before we do anything else. So remember how I said that 0 isn't the value that will be displayed? This is the reason why. Every time we just before we start outputting anything, so just before the first output, we increment the booking number so that any of the data displayed or any of the data chosen is for the customers with the correct booking number, right? All right, so then we have this. Okay, so a lot of this is just for vanities. So this empty space, much like we saw last video, is just for the aesthetics sake. For example, here you can see that this is the first line printed from task 2, right? So for that, what's happening here is that the code behind it is that when we are being given this choice, it says that while day choice is less than 1 or day choice is less than 7. So remember how we have initialized day choice as 0. So while day choice is less than 1, so that would be 0, or day choice is greater than 7, which would be greater than Sunday. So it's going to output, please enter the day of visit from the available days shown below. So essentially what's happening here is that day choice is referring to the index of the value chosen. So it says that please enter the day of visit from available days shown below. So that is from 1 to 7, right? So 1 being Monday and 7 being Sunday. And what this does is that this refers back to our days array in which we stored the days as strings corresponding to the indexes. So the first index was Monday and the second index was Tuesday, etc., etc. And so if we've chosen less than 1, that means it's less than Monday. If we've chosen greater than 7, that means it's greater than Sunday, and there's no such day. And so this is the validation. So this part which checks for the correct value to be entered, that is the part of validation of input. And if we remember from the first episode or first video, it said that data must be validated on entry. So data must be validated on entry, and that is exactly what we're doing here. This is to make sure that the data we are entering, that is valid and that has the correct input that has been chosen, right? So here we have please enter the days of visit from available days below, and then we input the day choice. So this is the variable we are inputting this this number in. So this is the prompt, as we can see right here. So this is the prompt, and whatever we're going to enter here, that is going to be the index of our chosen number. So let's say, for example, 2, that would mean Tuesday. And then it moves on to the next part of the code. If I had written that as something wrong, it would have told me that hey, like, you're not running the correct thing. For example, let's rerun this. Let's go back to task 1. Let's say I entered 8, and there we go. It says that error, please enter a valid day from the days shown above. So the days shown above are these, and so it's saying that enter a valid day. So 1 right here corresponds to Monday, to Tuesday, and so forth and so on, right? So let's say I want to go on Tuesday. I enter that, and then it moves me on to the next part of the code. All right, so let's go back here for now. And all right, so here we are. Now here it says that this this loop is exited here. So this end while corresponds to this while, and so this entire thing runs until the date chosen is either less than 1 or greater than 7. Now notice that this entire block of code will need to keep running if the values chosen are incorrect, right? Like if somebody has chosen the wrong value, it will have to show the person that, hey, you've chosen the wrong value, and it will have to keep showing you the new input, right? It's gonna have to keep giving you the option to input a correct value. So this statement here, this condition, is actually an error condition, that this is this is what it takes for this condition to be false. And if this condition is false, then that is when it's going to run all of this. So as soon as we input day choice right here, and if this day choice is a correct number, that means that it is between 1 and 7 inclusive. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. That means that this condition is no longer true. This if block doesn't run, because again, this if block runs on the false condition. And if that's not true, then this if block doesn't run, and this end while occurs, and it exits the loop, right? It breaks the loop or exits the loop, and it does not rerun the next iteration. So next what it does is that it says input, please enter the number of adults visiting. So similar to what we saw right here. So please enter the number of adults visiting, and then you input that into the variable num adults. Right here is where it gets interesting. So if you remember from the first video, the tickets had a little extra constraint on them. The tickets said that, one second. Yeah, so the tickets said that an adult can bring up to 2 children. So if there are more children than adults, in such a way that the number of children is not a direct multiple of 2 of the number of adults at maximum, then that means that the tickets are not valid, right? Because one adult can bring up to 2 children. So if there's 2 adults, there can be a maximum of 4 children, right? There can be anything like from 0 to 4, but it cannot be greater than 4 because the maximum number that an adult can bring is 2 children, right? So here, before we input the number of children, so this entire thing is inputting the number of children, right? But before we do that, we need to make sure that the children we're entering is a correct value, right? So we say that while the number of children is greater than, so again, the while loops will always run on the false values. They will always run on the error statements, right? So whenever there is a problem in the input, that is when the while loop is going to run. Of course, for the first time it runs, it will have to run, and for that we'll set either an extra parameter or we'll set the initialization in a way that it automatically is an error statement, right? And then therefore it's going to enter into the loop in the first place. So here, for instance, we set the number of children as -1. Ignore the number of children tickets for now, just focus on the number of children, and we set that as less than -1, right? Sorry, as we set that as -1. So here we have 2 conditions being fulfilled for this statement to be true. So we say that while the number of children is greater than the number of adults times 2, so this is the problem statement. If the number of children, so let's say the number of children are 3, are greater than twice of the number of adults, so let's say it is the number of adults is 1, right? So the maximum amount of children that the one adult can bring is 2, right? Because it's one adult per it's 2 children per adult. So for any given number of adults, so let's just call that a, for any given a, the number of children, the maximum number of children is 2a, right? So c is less than equals to 2a because the maximum number of children that an adult can bring is 2, right? So what we're checking is that if the number of children is greater than twice the number of adults, this means that there is a problem with the statement. So that means that this input block needs to rerun. It needs to keep continuing because there has been a problem. However, we also are going to set an initialization parameter, which is the num children. So it says that if num children equals to -1, so if while this or this, right? So or the initial value for num children is -1, right? So this is the part that ensures that the first time we run this code, this loop will run, and then depending on this input, it's going to determine whether this part is fulfilled or not, and then it's going to determine whether or not it needs to keep moving, right? But for the first time, this is the parameter that's going to initialize it. This is the parameter that's going to make the loop run in the first place. All right. So same procedure for the input of number of children. So we give the prompt, so please enter the number of children visiting, and then we say input children, and we make the same format of check, except this time instead of there being a choice like that where it's less than or equal to something, we just say that if the number of children is greater than the number of adults times 2, which means that there are too many children, we give the error output that maximum 2 children are allowed per adult. Right, and here we just have a blank input statement, so we don't really have a constraint for the number of seniors. I guess you can make an argument that input must not be string, input must not be like a negative value, but as far as the exam is concerned, we sort of take that for granted. So the only checks that need to be made are logic checks for the most part. There are some exceptions, but for the most part. Alright, so here we have input the number of seniors. Right, so now what we do is that it says that while the type ticket is not equals to 1 and the type ticket is not equals to 2. So this will make more sense in just a second. But ticket type, sorry, not type ticket. but what we've done here is that, remember, we initialized ticket type to 0. So ticket type, the ticket type refers to whether the tickets are an individual ticket or whether they are a family ticket or a group ticket rather. So the compound tickets are the group tickets and the family tickets, right? And the individual tickets are are the adult tickets, the child tickets, and the senior tickets. So we need to first determine that what type of ticket is the person buying, right? So we have to make sure that the amount of tickets that are being bought, what type are they? So here we have two distinct types. So the biggest two types of tickets are 1-day tickets and 2-day tickets, right? So we are saying that we're outputting, please enter your ticket type. So for 1-day tickets, enter 1. For 2-day tickets, enter 2. And so here the person enters the ticket type, and if they're none of like, if they're neither 1 and they're not 2, that means that there has been a wrong input because there's only 2 options, right? And so we say that output error message, please enter the the valid ticket type, and then this statement also gets fulfilled just like all the rest, and then this loop keeps running until we get a correct value, right? So there we go. Let's just get rid of some of the junk on the screen. All right. So once that happens, now here is where things get a little bit interesting. So we say that while individual is less than 0 or individual is greater than 1, this is the same thing in this particular case as saying is not equals to 1 or is not equals to 0, because really if it's less than 0 then it's on this end, if it's greater than 1 it's on this end. So really what you're left with is just the choice of 0 and 1. Don't worry if you didn't understand that, you don't really need to. That was just some logic explanation. All right, so individual is the variable that determines, like I said before, whether the ticket type is an individual purchase or if it's a compound purchase. And we just discussed what those are. So compound purchases are all the purchases of the group and the family tickets. So those are the tickets that are not individual, right? So while individual is less than 0 or while individual is less than is greater than 1, we say that output, would you like to make individual bookings, yes or no? So 1 for yes and 0 for no, and then the user inputs whether they want individual bookings or not. If so we say this statement again. So this is basically a wrong input. So if this is the case, we output an error message that please enter a valid input, 1 for yes and 0 for no. Now what our code is going to do is that it's going to be sectioned off into two different parts. If the ticket purchases are individual, it's going to show you all of the individual inputs. So you're going to have to purchase the number of like adult tickets, number of children tickets, the number of senior tickets. Either one of those tickets can be 0, so you can have 0 adult tickets, or like you can have like 0 children or 0 seniors and just adults. You can have just seniors, just children, and sorry, just senior, just adult, and no children, and you and so forth and so on. You get the point, right? So we have to ask for each of the for each of the inputs whether the user would like to input a non-zero ticket number for that particular ticket type, right? So that is for the individuals. The same principle will apply for the compound tickets. So for the group tickets and the family tickets, the same principle is going to apply for that. All right. So here it says that, one second, here it says that if individual equals 1, so basically this is the purchasing of individual tickets. Now we're going to input a bunch of tickets. So it's going to output each ticket, and then it's going to ask you for the input of the number of those tickets, and then it's going to take in the value of those numbers. So it's going to say that please enter the number of adults tickets you wish to purchase, and then you input number adult. Now here is this is similar to what we've done exactly before, that if the number of children tickets is greater than the number of adults. And notice that this time we have used a new variable, which is number of children tickets. And the reason we did that is because here we have already set the number of children. So this part of the code is just using the data of how many people are present in the group to later identify in task 3 whether or not the purchase was the right purchase for them, right? But however, it can't do that if the only thing it is monitoring is directly the number of tickets input. And it also needs to make sure that every person who is in the group is buying a ticket. So for example, if there are like 3 adults and 2 children, which make a total of 5 people, if the people are only purchasing 4 tickets, then that means that there's one person short, right? So one person who didn't purchase the ticket. So this part of the code is just making sure that everyone who is in the group has purchased a ticket, or rather, this is the part which takes the data, and later we use this data to make sure that everyone has purchased a ticket. So that being said, when we are actually purchasing the ticket for the number of children, we are going to use a different variable, simply for the reason that num children has already been stored. So one second, let me just erase all of this. So what's going to happen is that while so the exact same principle applies. So whatever we checked up there, we're going to check it up here and do the exact same process, except this time the input is going to be please enter the number of children tickets, not the number of children in the group, and not the number of children visiting. We're going to say how many children tickets do you wish to purchase, and this time we're going to update that into the num children tickets, right? So instead of updating that into number of children, we're going to update that into num children tickets, and then we're going to do the exact same check on the new variable, and then we're gonna come out of that loop, considering that the person has input the correct value based on the same parameters that we used last time. And then it's going to say that just the simple statement again, that input the number of seniors, no checks there, really, there's no logical constraints, as we talked about before, and so it just inputs that and gets done with that part. Oh, and yeah, we input the number of adults right at the beginning as well. Yeah, so okay, so this else belongs to this if, right? So if individual equals 1, then you do all of this. However, if it does not equals 1, then that means it's equals 2, right? Because remember that individual can only have one of two values. It can have 1 or 0, sorry. So it's either 1 or it's 0. So if it's not 1, then the else condition is that it would be 0, which means that the individual bookings are not being made, which means that there are compound bookings being made. And for compound bookings, we need to input the data for the family tickets and the group tickets, because those are the only two types of tickets that are compounds, right? So here we have enter the number of family tickets you wish to purchase, similar input as to the seniors, because there's really no constraint there. And we have the number of group tickets you wish to purchase. So both of these purchases are happening in tandem, and here we have that purchase being made. Then what we're doing here, and again, this is for the calculation that is required for task 3. So remember when I said that we are going to do task 2 and 3 combined. So this is what that means, because the code for task 3 is better placed in the middle of the code for task 2. It's just a lot more efficient that way. So this line of code is used for task 3. Now here's the fun part. It says that if ticket type equals 1, that means that remember, ticket type determines whether it's a 1-day ticket or it's a 2-day ticket, right? So the total price has to be updated as the number of tickets multiplied by the price for that particular ticket. Now just a quick refresher, if you watched the previous videos, you probably already know this by now, but when we are talking about arrays, let's consider these two different arrays. So this is array 1, this is array 2. The type of ticket and the prices, and basically every single index in every array correspond to the same item. So if the first index corresponded to the adult item, the second index corresponded to the children, third index to the seniors, and so forth and so on. So we say that for ticket type equals 1, the total price is updated as number of adults multiplied by the ticket price 1 day. So this is the array that stores the prices for a single day ticket, and 1 is the index which refers to the adult. So we say that num adult times, and then we fetch this data from the first index of the array, which stores the 1-day ticket. So this becomes 20, so num adults times 20, or whatever the price was. That's what we have here. And then it does the exact same thing, so plus this plus this plus this plus this, and so it does it does the exact same thing for all of the other variables. So index number 2 for children, index number 3 for seniors, so forth and so on. So else, now this else belongs to this if group. So if ticket types is not equals to 1, which means that it's equals to 2, which means it's a 2-day ticket. So it's going to do the exact same thing. However, notice that this time, instead of referencing the array 1 day, we are now referencing the array 2 days. So this array stores all the data for the ticket prices of tickets for 2 days, right? So we're going to fetch that data and use those prices instead of the previous ones. Next, we're going to see whether or not the person would like to purchase a ticket for extra attraction. So if the person enters 1, that means that yes, they do. If they enter 0, that means that no, they don't. And so we say that if extra choice equals 1, then we output and input these statements, right? So we say please enter the number of tickets for lions feeding, and then we input them. We say please enter the number of tickets for penguin feeding, and we input them. And we say that please enter the number of barbecue feedings, and then we not barbecue feedings but barbecue tickets, and then we enter that, right? So here we have input number of penguins. So the number of lions and the number of penguins can be implemented without a constraint. However, remember that when we were discussing the barbecue in the first video, we said that the barbecue can only happen when we have a ticket of 2 days. So whenever we have a 2-day ticket, that is the only time the barbecue is valid. So here we have to make a check that if ticket type equals 2, then it's going to input this statement. So then it's going to show us the statement and it's going to input the barbecue numbers. However, if it's not equals to 2, so this else is corresponding to this if it's not equals to 2, that means that the barbecue is not applicable on 1-day tickets. And we know it's a 1-day ticket because if it's not 2, then the only other number can be is 1. So we do that, and then after we end this if block, we just compute the total prices again. So this time we are adding all the prices of the extra attractions, and so this now the total price has so the variable total price has all the relevant data. So it has the grand sum of prices of our data set, right, of our entire ticket set of tickets. Now for this next part, I would highly recommend that if you haven't watched the first video where we explained how task 3, the logic of task 3 is going to function, then I highly recommend that you go and watch that first, because I'm not actually going to explain the logic behind it again. I'm only going to explain how to implement that logic in code. So that's what we're doing here, right? I'm going to explain this, but why we are doing this I have already explained. So if you don't remember that, or if you haven't watched that, then I would recommend that you go back and watch the first video towards the end of the first video, where we explained how task 3 is going to be implemented. So this is the implementation for task 3. And yeah, like I said, if you don't follow along, so I am going to explain what the code does, but why the code does this for a task 3 implementation, I'm not going to explain. So for that, you might want to go back and take a refresher in the concepts discussed in the first video. All right, so that being said, just a lighthearted disclaimer. With that being said, here we have, so this is the check that is being made right at the first. So it is saying, and now this is quite a mouthful. So remember how we had two different checks. One was that if the number of children is a multiple of 3 and the number of adults is a multiple of 2, or I might be getting that the wrong way around actually. No, that's fine. So if the multiple of children is, so if the number of children is a multiple of 3 and the number of adults is a multiple of 2, then that means that the best ticket to be purchased, based on the calculations we made in the first episode, in the first video, the best ticket to purchase is the family ticket. So this check is a check on the family ticket. So we say that if num adult time times num senior mod 2. So this is this should be a plus here. So if the number of adults and number of seniors, so the total number of adults and seniors, like we said, up to 2 adults or a senior. So if the number of adults and seniors mod 2, so mod, remember, mod gives us the remainder. So whenever we divide a number by something, mod is the remainder of that division. So let's say I divide 4 by 2. 1 second. Yeah, so if I divide 4 by 2, the mod of that is going to be 0. If I divide, let's say, 5 by 2, the mod of that is going to be 1, because 2 times 2 plus 1 equals 5, right? So this goes away and the remainder is 1. So mod always gives us the remainder. So we are saying that if 1 second. We're saying that if the number of adults plus number of seniors, mod 2 equals 0. So what this basically means is that this number of the sum of adults and seniors, this number is divisible by 2, because whenever something is divisible, the remainder is 0, right? So like, for example, even numbers are divisible by 2, right? So 14 divided by 2, there is no remainder, right? The answer is 7. 7 and with no remainder. So that is the exact same concept that we are using here. So we say that if the total number of adults and seniors divided by 2 gives us a remainder of 0, that means it is divisible by 2, which means that this check applies. Similarly, we say that if the number of children divided by 3 has a remainder of 0, which means that it is a multiple of 3, then this also qualifies for the best tickets, right? And we okay, so the next thing we have to make sure is that the number of tickets of adults and the number of adults and the number of children are corresponding to this order. So for example, it could also be 4 adults and, let's say, a multiple of 3, so 9 children, right? But this is not the same multiple as so both of these are not being multiplied by the same factor, and as we discussed in the first video, they both have to be scaled up by the same amount. So this has been scaled up by 2, but this has been scaled up by 3. So 3 3 is a 9, and 4 and 2 2s are 4, right? So this has been scaled up by different amounts, which means that this is not a correct number. So what the correct number is, that if we have 2 adults and 3 children, then for every so for every one child, and I apologize for the bit of mathematics here, but for every one child we have 2 by 3 adults. So then the total number of children should be the total number of adults multiplied by 2/3. So this is the check we are making here, that the total number of adults and seniors is the 2/3 of the number of children. So if all of these conditions pass, if all these conditions pass, this means that the right choice, the best valued option for this group of people is the family ticket. So it is the ticket type 4, right? And you can go back and check with the areas that we have initialized in the first episode, in the first video, and you can go back and check with those. So here so this means that the ticket to be purchased, the best ticket to be purchased, is the family ticket. However, if any of these conditions aren't passed, that means that the next things we have to check are the group tickets and the individual tickets. So the only parameter, the only constraint for the group ticket was that it has to be greater than that the people have to be greater than 6, right? The total number of people have to be more than 6. So here we have made that check, that if the number of people is greater than or equal to 6, then the best option is ticket types 5, which was the group ticket. However, if none of these pass, then the only thing that remains is the individual ticket, and we automatically set that as best options equals individual. So this entire block was the check of the best option. So this right here was actually task 3. Was, well, I mean, half the implementation of task 3. So this was all the necessary checks we had to make for task 3. The output of that, of course, will come when we output everything together, the entire data set together. Let me just clean that up a bit. So here we go. Okay. All right. So now what it's going to do is that it's going to check whether our values are, whether the chosen value and the best value match or do not match, right? So we say that if the best option is individual, so the best option is individual, so that means that this code ran, then and individual is not equals to 1. So then the choice that we made, the choice of individual we made way up here, if that is not equals to 1, that means that individual choices are not being made. If this is true, then this means that the ticket options chosen are not the best value, because we just learned that the best option has been declared as individual, but the ticket type chosen wasn't an individual at all. So that means that the ticket type chosen was the wrong choice, and we're going to display that to the user by saying the ticket options were not the best options available. So it's either this. So for if any one of these conditions, if any one of these conditions is true, that means that the ticket choice was incorrect, right? So we have to add ORs to each of these to make sure that none of these pass, none of these fail the test, right? So the next thing we have to choose is if best option equals ticket 5, which meant that the group ticket is the best option, and the number of group tickets purchased is 0. So that means that there are no group tickets that are purchased. Then that is also an error message, because that is not the correct option to choose. Or if the best option is the fourth, which is the family ticket, and again the number of family tickets purchased is equals to 0. Let me just clear this up a bit so it's a bit more visible. If the number of family tickets purchased is equals to 0, then that again is going to trigger this warning. So now that we're done with that, it's also gonna output what the correct choice actually is. So then so all of this is happening within this if block. This if block this if statement considers whether or not the value chosen is incorrect, and if it is incorrect, then it enters into all of this. And what it does here is that it says that the ticket is that one, it outputs the error message, and second, it makes sure that it correctly displays what the correct option is. So if the best option is individual, so if this was run again and the best option chosen was individual, then that is the worst underline ever. So if the best option chosen was individual, then it's going to output that the best option is the individual tickets. Now notice that we have added this little bracket s, which means that there could be more than one individual ticket spot. If this is not the case, so if the best option was not individual and the best option was ticket 5, which again was the group ticket, so we are going to input that the best option value is group ticket. So we're going to show that. We're going to say that, hey, the best value was group tickets, and this is what went wrong. You didn't choose a group ticket. Lastly, we have if the best ticket option is equals to ticket types 4, which was the family tickets, then again we're going to import that. We're going to output that your best ticket option is family ticket, and you have not chosen that, right? So next, what we're going to do is, now that we have displayed whether or not the person has made the right choice, we are going to ask them whether or not they wish to proceed. Now if they do wish to proceed, the correct input is 1, and if they don't, the correct input is 0, following the same trend that we did with all of our previous yes no inputs, right? So we're going to input proceeds, and then we're going to see what the value is. If the value is 0, then we are simply going to set continue flag to true and do absolutely nothing else. What this does is that once it sets this to true, all of this, everything you see here, is skipped, and it goes right back to the first loop. So it goes right back to where this was being implemented, right? And it runs all of this thing again. So essentially the person has to make all of the choices again, because we did not wish to proceed with our current booking, so we cancel that, and we now have the choice to do it all over again, right? So if they do not wish to proceed, we're going to show that. However, if they do wish to proceed and the proceed variable was not 0, then this is going to be the output of everything. So we're going to output the booking details, that's just the title, and then we're going to show the booking number. Now remember this little thing where we incremented booking number right at the start. So every time we run this code, booking number will again be incremented, and we're going to have a new booking number for every booking. So we're going to output that booking number, and the next thing we're going to do is output the day of visit. Now day choice was the variable in which we stored the index, so from 1 to 7 if you remember, and then is going to access this days array which stores all the days in strings, and it's going to say that, hey, this was your choice, and it's going to input the correct day from that chosen index, right? Let me just pull up the simulator really quick so I can show you what I mean, show you how this output is going to look. So if this is appearing on the screen, yes it is. Okay, so let's say that we are outputting this. So we go with this, number of days 4, adults visiting, let's just say 2, children 1, because we have to keep that under the bound. Let's say 0. Let's say a 1-day ticket. Would you like individual booking? Yes. Please enter the number of tickets you wish to purchase. So we had 2 adults, so we have 2 purchases. We have 1 purchase for children, 0 for seniors, and for now I would not like to book an extra attraction. And so here we go. So this is our booking details. So booking number is what we were shown right here, and then we have the day of visit. So day of visit is everything we have chosen right here. So the day of visit gives us this, right, day of visit, and then it gives us this value. So notice how even though I entered I entered an index, it fetched me the correct day from that index, right? So pretty self-explanatory. Let's zoom out a bit so you can see everything. Is this visible? Yes it is. Okay, so once it's done that, now it is going to see which data to output, whether to output the 1-day data or whether to output the 2-day data. And if it does that, then will it rather output the group ticket data or the individual ticket data, right? So the composite data or the individual data. So the initial check being made here is type ticket equals to 1. Now if ticket type, sorry, I keep saying type ticket type. If ticket type equals 1, then that means that the ticket chosen is a 1-day ticket. So is everything we do here, one second, everything we do here is going to consist of the 1-day tickets, and I cannot seem to get this out of this for some reason. There we go. So everything we do here is going to consist of 1-day tickets, right? So as you can see here, the ticket prices are ticket prices 1 day. All of these are ticket prices 1 day, right? So, and it even says 1 day here. So all of this is going to run for the 1-day type of ticket purchase. So there's that. And then it says that if individual equals 1, so if individuals were chosen, so if the tickets were individual, then it's going to check how many of each ticket there was, and if there was a ticket purchased for that, it's simply going to display the data for that, right? So if num adults is greater than 0, and again, like we did enter adults, so num adults will be greater than 0 right here. So we chose 2. So here it will print this data because we did choose an adult ticket. So if num adult is greater than 0, then it outputs all of this. So it outputs the ticket, outputs the ticket type. So all of this is just a string. These straight lines are just for aesthetic purposes. You don't need to write them in your exam. You won't like get your marks cut if you don't write them. It's just something we did for the aesthetic purpose. There we go. So it says the number of tickets is now concatenated onto there with the number of adult tickets purchased. So this will automatically fetch the data we had stored. So this was the number of tickets, and then it just stored that here. And then it says that the price per ticket is, and then it fetches that price. So ticket price 1 day, and as you recall from the introduction video, and again if you haven't watched that, I would recommend you go and watch that first. We know that the ticket the array we stored the data in For the prices, that was this array. It was ticket prices 1 day, right? So then it repeats this exact same thing for all the other types of tickets. So if children is greater than 0, then it outputs all of this. So this time then the variable changes to num children, and the ticket prices per day, ticket prices 1 day index increases to 2. And it does a similar thing for number of seniors. Now notice that we didn't choose any seniors, right? So our seniors were 0, and therefore in the output we don't have the senior part because it never passed this check. So if num seniors is greater than 0, then it outputs all of this, right? But it didn't do that because it didn't pass this check. It didn't have a greater than 0 value for the number of seniors, so that didn't check. Now this else is for this tick for this if, right? It's not for this if. This one comes later. It's for this if. It's for this if. So this else means that the individual tickets were not being bought, which means that they were group tickets or composite tickets that were being bought. So if composite tickets were being bought, that means that there were one of two options for the tickets, right? It was either the family ticket or the group ticket, or I mean it could be both. So which is why we have chosen to display each of them depending on whether or not they were bought. So the exact same principle again. We say that if number of family is greater than 0, then the ticket is family, and basically this is just telling us the type of ticket and what it does, right? So family, 2 adults, seniors plus 3 children, 1 day. So this is a 1 day ticket. And then we say the number of tickets is, and concatenate that with the number of family tickets bought. And then we say that the price per ticket was the correct price fetched from the index. We repeat this exact same thing again for the group tickets, and the only thing we do is change the variable, of course change the title, and also what we do is we increment the index again, right? So once that is done, the next thing we do is this else now corresponds. So let's just draw a double star here. This else now corresponds to this to this if statement, right? And here I've written a little comment which shows us what I mean. So this else means that if ticket type is equals to 2. Now if this happens, I want you to take a second on your own, analyze this code just for like 10 seconds and see if you can point out one difference, just one, that we made between this and what we've just done. So take a few seconds for that and see if you can point out anything. Alright, so if you wish to take more time, you can just pause the video. But the only thing that is changing in all of this, so if you notice this from here till basically like the end, so till here, everything we're doing is just a repeat of what we've already done. However, the only thing that has changed is that this is now 2 days, and instead of accessing the array ticket prices 1 day, we are now accessing the array of ticket prices 2 days, simply because the only thing that gets updated is the number of tickets that were bought, right? Or sorry, the price of the tickets that were bought and the type of tickets. So the type of tickets we updated right here, and the price of the tickets we updated right here. So the rest of this code is the exact same thing that we've already done. So it checks whether there have been tickets being bought, and if there are being tickets being bought for that value, then we just output them with the correct type and the correct price, right? So this entire thing is just a repeat of what we have already done. So now there's a bunch of end ifs because we are approaching the end of the if blocks. Let me zoom out a bit more so you can see this corner. Is that visible? Perfect. Okay. So now what it does is that it simply just checks whether or not we bought an extra attraction. And so it says that if num line is greater than 0, then output extra attraction, line feeding, price per person, and then it references to that to the array we stored it in. So we stored it in the extra attraction prices. The first element is the line feeding, the second element is the penguin feeding, and then the third element is the barbecue feeding, right? So we do the exact same thing. We check whether the thing was purchased. If it was purchased, then we output this statement. And so here we have if number of barbecue is equals to 0, is greater than 0, then we do this for the barbecue thing as well. Now The last part is the total cost. So we say that output the total cost and then the total price, which we calculated earlier, we output that, and that brings us to the end of the receipt. So the entire this booking details receipt, it brings us to the end of that. So the last thing we do is output the total cost. Now this is the part that that determines whether or not we run this in another loop or not. So we say that while continue flag is not equals to 1 or it's not equals to 0, so would you like to make another booking? Yes or so, like 1 or 0, yes or no. So and then it inputs continue flag, and it says that if continue flag is not equals to 1 or and it's not equals to 0, so it can be neither this nor this. For there to be an error in the input, it has to be neither one of these two, because any one of these two is a correct input, right? 1 is a correct input and 2 is a correct input. For these both to be false, for like the type of input to be false, it has to be none of these two. So this has to be true and this has to be true. So we implement these two, and then we say that if this is the case, then output error, please enter a valid response 1-0, and then this entire thing runs until this condition is no longer satisfied. So that means that a correct input has been made. And then if the input of continue flag is 0, that means that we exit that means that we exit everything. And if it's 1, then that means that right back here continue flag turns into true, and then this entire thing keeps being run again. So there we have it. That was the implementation of task 3 of this pseudocode, and that of the PRM pseudocode, and that brings us to the end of everything we have discussed. If there are any follow-up questions, you are always welcome to drop them in the comments down below. And if there's anything needed to be cleared up, you might want to watch, if something didn't make sense in this video, you might want to watch the first two again, just to make sure you have the concepts cleared and you know what is happening up until this point. Alright, so this has been PRM for May-June 2022, paper 22. O-levels computer science, and best of luck for the exams.